o'clock, it's 9:01. We've had a really good time already. And this is August 10th. It is our first meeting in several weeks. And we have three folks with us in person. Do we have someone online?
We have Jan Williams, and we have Hebe Quinton,
Okay.
and we have Jordan.
Ah, hi Jordan. Ms. Quinton. And so, I will begin with the folks that are in the room if you have some comments for public comments.
Okay.
Just here to hear your report on the, excuse me, the electric aggregation plan.
Okay.
I have questions about the data for the MS1. Have you received it yet?
Next meeting, well, you'll be receiving it after Friday, I hope, to review.
So we do not have it yet.
And
Okay,
then
all right.
review.
And when it comes in, would I be able to get a copy of it? Understanding that it's a draft and that's not final.
Yeah, I don't, if it is able to be dispersed, we will disperse it. We had information last year that was marked draft and confidential, do not disclose.
Mhm.
If it's marked that way, we won't be able to. I'm not familiar with exactly what they mark when,
Mhm,
but-
mhm.
so if it comes in
All right,
and it's able to be dispersed, we will send you an email and let you
Alright.
come and get it.
good. And what would make it confidential?
I have no idea.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that was mostly the tax rate.
I think that was the tax rate
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm just sensitive to it
Right.
because it was the first time I'd
Right.
seen a document come that
Sure, okay, all right.
Right.
we were told not to share.
All right, and then I have the same question for the old versus new values. Have you received that information yet?
Have we?
We have not printed that report yet because none of the values are final.
Okay,
They're not final until the MS1 information is reviewed.
okay, so,
Here's the issue.
yep, go
Is
ahead.
that when you send out a report to a public person
Mm-hmm,
that's not even close to final numbers, you know, then that information is out there, it gets quoted, and you
Mhm.
get questions on it, and it's not even the information that the board is gonna end up considering.
mm-hmm,
So until we get to that point,
okay,
we can certainly give a old to new that we have finalized from last year.
Sure.
But that's not what Ms. Williams and you obviously want.
right, right,
So as soon as, Todd's coming on Friday, as soon as I get an idea of when that info will be somewhat
mm-hmm,
ready to go to the board, then
Formalized.
you can,
okay, good. So maybe I should talk to you next Monday or something like that?
great,
Okay,
that'd be perfect.
thank you.
Very good. Hi, Martha. Hi. Ms. Williams, did you have something for public comment?
Rich has already asked my question. I'm all good, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Ms. Quinton?
Is that Jim nurse in the room with you?
Yes, it is.
I'm mostly here in support of the electric aggregation committee and the materials that I shared with you guys about the agenda.
Yeah.
And I see that it's on your agenda. I was gonna voice a little concern that I thought something terrible had happened because I was exchanging email with Jordan and Dina 2 weeks ago, and then there was no notice that your meeting was canceled at all. And then the agenda for this week didn't come out until last night, so I was wondering if, some catastrophe had struck.
Yes, it was vacation.
Yeah.
We apologize for not having sent a notice out, but it was a well-deserved and much-needed break.
Well, but I noticed I was exchanging email with Jordan and Dina, and I'm subscribed on the web to all the notices around the select board, so I should have seen something, but I did not.
That's right, because there wasn't something to see, and again, I apologize for that.
And we do
Because,
our
I mean,
best.
Well, citizens do try to make schedules to be available to you guys, so.
Yep, we completely understand that, and it just happened. It doesn't usually happen, but there are sometimes circumstances that we don't anticipate, and things happen. again, our apologies. Martha, are you here for a specific agenda item, or did you just wanna have public comment?
Well, I just saw the agenda last night
Right.
to see that this is on the
Yep.
agenda today, and I actually can't stay for the full time of the, I don't, it looks like it's gonna be a ways down the agenda, so I'm not, first of all, just quick public comment, I'm here about the review of the, Community Care of Lyme sponsored events, the Health and Wellness Fair and the Thai meal, where we've had some requests for additional insurance documentation beyond our fully covering insurance that has already been submitted and covers the liability, and so I would love to encourage there to be a more consistent and clear approach to the liability insurance thing, because we're being asked about exactly the same thing as already was approved and supported last year. So that's just a piece that is a challenge, and B, I would like to certainly be there during the conversation if we can have it, and depending on when it occurs in this meeting or when you anticipate we'll get to it.
Okay, so actually I chatted with Dina a little this morning, and I wonder if it would be more productive if Dina and I and you, maybe Jordan, because she does a lot of the processing, got together and sat down about some of those specific concerns and what we need to be reassured that everybody's covered.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Would that be
Thank
good?
you. It
Okay.
feels like the swirl of emails
Yeah.
is not helping, and
Right,
the clarity of,
So,
that the insurance
um,
companies can provide will be
I
helpful.
think maybe early next week would be good. So,
Tuesday's not good for me, but Monday's great.
Monday's great. So we'll see if we can send out, we'll have Jordan, if you're listening, if you could get a hold of Martha and me and Dina and you, and let's set up a time on Monday to sit down and talk about the insurance.
That is terrific. Does that then push the further discussion of the events, or is that also still gonna be discussed today?
I think we're also gonna discuss that. We're gonna talk about parking, which is the other big issue that comes up when we have a big event on the common. So-
Okay, and again, the parking for the event, we had an approved parking plan last year, it's identical to last year's. I know the one piece was missing was naming an agent now 6 weeks in advance, and we did name an agent, so that is the same as what was approved last year.
So we will be
And I know-
talking about that because we may change something a little bit up. So,
Is that gonna be specific to this event, the requirements are gonna
Yes.
change?
it may, yes. So
Okay.
you're about 4 items down. We will move along. We'll try and get there before you have to leave.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, we have, I think, some changes that may be positive we're gonna try out. And then we have a suggestion for monitors of the parking,
Okay,
which would help.
okay.
Thank you. So, do we have anyone else with public comments? Okay. Then we're going to move on. Let's look at the January 13th public and non-public session minutes.
July, but that's okay.
July would be good. January, July, whatever. It's
That was a
been,
long
There's only
vacation.
3
Yeah.
J months.
That was, yeah.
it was a very long
I had an
vacation.
8-month vacation.
No wonder we didn't send notices out.
That's right.
What do we wish to do with the July 13th public session minutes? Thank you, Ben.
Second?
Thank you, David. Are there any changes? We're all good? All those in favor say aye,
Ben, aye. David, aye.
and Judy, aye. They are approved. And the non-public session minutes from July 13th.
I'll move them.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ben. Any changes to those?
Ben, aye.
All those in favor say aye.
David, aye.
Judy, aye. Those are approved. Non-public session minutes, okay. And then we have a manifest. And the manifest is the amount of $83,369
Okay.
and you had a chance to look at the manifest?
I have not.
Okay,
I'm not sure I have it.
you know, I don't think I have it either.
think we did have.
I emailed it
Well, you emailed lots of stuff.
yesterday. It's right there.
I know, I'm
I
looking.
know I emailed lots of stuff and I apologize for all the different emails.
Along with the manifest, I believe there's gonna be one additional check that you're going to write
Yes,
that we hopefully will approve. The eighth grade
Right.
students actually came out, 6 of them, and cleaned up the beach area and the grass area, the recreation area, and really made a big difference down at the beach. And we'd like to make a donation for them. They were there between an hour and a half and 2 hours. And I think maybe $250 might be a nice donation to them for that. And then we did have one of our monitors agree to go in the mornings and clean up what was there, right?
he's not a monitor.
Oh, I thought he was.
One of the monitors said yes, but then they changed their mind. So this young man was somebody totally different that actually came to me, because, not, it's a long story, I won't go into the whole thing, but he was on vacation and got paid by the neighbor of this camp they were staying at to clean up their beach from goose droppings. So I went, well, geez, would you
He's
like to?
experienced.
So he's been going out every day and keeping it
Oh, how
clean.
great.
I know,
How great is that?
it's fabulous.
It has been, I've been down a couple times to check and it's been wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm glad you have this thing, environmental fact sheet, because,
Yeah,
we had the complaints that it was the geese that were polluting the pond, and in reality, every time there's a big storm,
right,
all coliform exists everywhere in every swamp and everything. Fecal coliform gets
Yeah.
washed off of septic systems and stuff like that.
right,
So it spikes after a big storm.
Yep.
But not necessarily a concern unless somebody's septic system is caught running directly.
right.
right,
Right.
it'll
And-
flow away.
And part of the problem at the pond that increases it is that the inlet from Trout Pond is right next to the beach. So when all that runoff comes from big storms, it's usually within a day or two that everything spikes. And if they happen to come test and, you know,
Well,
so,
it's gonna spike in the
Right.
pond anyways.
That's
because of
correct.
circulation.
right, Yep.
But it's not, you can't put your finger on the source.
right,
I mean, we have an aquifer, the whole town, village draws from. There's a swamp out there that's full of coliforms, not fecal coliform, but it's full of coliform
Mhm.
bacteria.
right.
And
Okay, have you guys had a chance to,
I just did, do you know what's the $3,000 on the fire truck? Do you
That-
know?
That was a sensor. It was the repair of a sensor. The sensor itself was $2,000 something. Yeah.
What kind of sensor, do you know?
that's why you buy old equipment, they don't have those things.
There you go.
Okay.
And at your next meeting, I think, or at this meeting, you could even do it if you wanted to. I forgot I had put that on the manifest because it needs to be paid. We were gonna ask about having that come out of the emergency capital reserve fund, emergency equipment repair.
Yeah.
Like that
Reserve fund.
$3,000?
That three, yeah.
and there's also going to be one
Mhm.
for the highway department,
Right.
one of the trucks, the 550, is that correct?
The 2016 550, yeah,
Which would
had
be
to have,
$8,000, a lot of work.
yeah.
So both of those bills have reached the limit of what is needed to qualify to come out of the emergency funds.
Okay.
So, and we have, you checked this morning, we have
I just checked.
sufficient funds in both,
There's $25,207 in there,
in the,
in the emergency vehicle repair fund.
okay.
You have your extra pen,
I do.
thank you.
What would be good from my perspective is that when we have stuff like that, if we could just get a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what the nature of the problem was and what the nature of the repair was, the sort of
Yeah.
thing that the service advisor would tell you at the car dealership.
I have the 551, but I forgot, sorry, because I was
No,
on
you were on
vacation, I think, and trying to get everything done in a
Since
hurry.
January.
I didn't include the invoice for the, fire one,
Okay,
but I can go get it, Jordan can bring it down if you'd like
it's
to see
okay,
it.
just shoot me an
Okay.
email at some
I
point.
know
and-
it's a
and
sensor, and this one, the
What-
550 was,
what kind of sensor it was and what
Yeah.
it does.
the
So-
550 was a multitude of things.
Given that we've got two things coming out of emergency repair, I think we should have a motion and a second and a vote on the,
I'll move that those two items be paid out of our emergency repair budget.
Thank you, David.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor say aye,
And I,
David, I.
and Judy, aye.
And fire and highway, thank you.
Yes. And we're okay on the,
And I'll make sure the minutes have the amount, exact amounts in it.
yeah, because it will be a slightly different amount. Here's your
Oh, thank you.
manifest. Okay. Let's punt on the 6-month budget review
Mhm.
and budgets, the budget schedule. We'll go to CCL.
Thank you. I'm gonna move over here so I can see Dan's face, and that's okay.
My face.
I do want to, well, I can see it on the screen, but it feels
Yeah.
a little silly when I'm in the room, so.
Totally.
So we have a health and wellness fair coming up shortly, and then the Thai food fundraiser is several weeks after that.
You know, the Thai
It's
food.
the other way?
It's the other way around.
Okay,
The Thai food fundraiser is on Saturday, the 9th of September,
okay,
and the health and wellness fair is the last Saturday in September, which is the 30th. That's the same time it's been the last, the
couple
other
of
4
years,
times.
yeah. Okay, so, one of the things that I was thinking, because I know parking is always an issue, not just for CCL, for
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
that uses the common. And also, thinking about how to, two things. Regulating the parking, making sure somebody or two somebodies are available to make sure when everybody pulls up where they shouldn't pull up, to move them along. The Boy Scouts, I believe, there were several Boy Scouts who did it for one of the other larger events very successfully. Were just on duty, and they approached everybody who was pulling up, trying to park on the grass on the backside of the common, and advised them where parking was. And I was thinking, if what we need is 2 people, one on each end of the common, to sort of direct folks, and maybe CCL, maybe the band people, anybody that has an event there, maybe they could reach out to the Boy Scouts as a little bit of a fundraiser, give them some kind of an honorarium, because that leaves whatever the fun, whatever the event people are, doing the event, rather than policing parking.
Yeah. So, the Boy Scouts have been involved with this event all along, and right now, like many organizations, their specific participation is, you know, who's gonna show up on a given
Right.
day is hard for them to commit to in advance. We can certainly commit to having a couple of people on board and volunteers, which we did, to be monitoring. It's a little more complicated than just that, because people are allowed to park for a minute or a couple of minutes. And so, you know, you let them park for a couple of minutes, and then you're also, in addition to sort of having made that statement, now they're in and amongst 250 people walking around, and like, how do I find them again to make sure they really did leave in 5 minutes? And those are the kinds of things that are just complicated for
Well, yeah,
a
but
volunteer monitor to be able to address, because you need to have like a babysitter for each person who you're letting to have.
well, I think you need to say to them, you've got 5 minutes, come back to your car.
Well, that is absolutely what we say every time, and we
So-
say, we're gonna get in trouble if you don't come
The
back to our
problem
car.
is gonna be,
So
if
it's-
we can't fix it, we wanna see the common used as much as possible, and if we can't fix the parking problem, it's really silly for us to go, and as I said, it's not just CCF.
No, I appreciate that, so
It's,
that's.
it's really, my other suggestion that, you can tell, I've been awake a lot of nights, trying to
Yeah.
think of solutions.
No, it's so hard, yeah, you.
Is for these events, that we block off the back of the common road. We keep one lane open, one direction only for traffic, for cars, vehicles. And the other paved lane does become parking, and it would be dedicated to accessible handicap parking and other instances, if there were 20 spaces that could be marked out there, people could come. When they're full, someone has to go somewhere else. And we don't have to police it, and you don't have to police it. I'd love to give that a try, see if that works,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that sounds,
Then you don't have to have somebody asking you, can I park here for 5 minutes?
well, yeah, I mean, part of what's challenging about it is that it isn't, so anyway, I think that's a great idea. Being able to actually, for a given event, actually park safely when there's gonna be a big event, block it up, that makes total sense to me, so I'm 100% in support of that. Absent that, the challenge is that it isn't always, those rules aren't always enforced, no matter who asks them, right? For whatever event might happen or something happen across the common, or not even an event, people are parked along there for longer than 5 minutes at, all the time, or many times. And so it's just confusing for people, even if they're told, you have to be back here in 5 minutes, they're like, well, that's not always true. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, maybe there need to actually be a no parking sign all the way across there, or some other things that aren't about the event organizer trying to, or we, as we've offered each time, pay for police coverage when you need to have it there. If the town needs to enforce parking regulations, have a town representative be able to enforce parking regulations, which is a little bit, feels different, do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I
anyway, but I
understand
love
what
the
you're saying, and
idea.
we can think about that. It's, in a way, it's sort of like penalizing the event and penalizing the police force. Suddenly, they've got an extra day of duty,
Well,
that,
yeah,
yeah, but, it comes out of their personal life, and so if someone's on duty on Saturday and they're not on duty on Monday because they're taking a day off.
yeah, no, I appreciate
It's
that, I'm
tough.
just,
It's-
that's how we
yeah.
decide how to, do we have enough staff to cover things that are important to the town that get enforced? That's the question. I understand it comes out of your personal life, I totally understand how extra hours are very hard with an organization and, or a responsibility, so that part I
So,
don't,
I mean-
I'm putting it out there as you are,
Yeah.
as,
And I'm putting it
I
out.
think it's a good idea to, we do own the back of the common, to exercise the one-way and the parking at an event, just to let people see that it's a possibility, and things never work out perfectly, so let's try it.
Sean,
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that as far as the backside of the common goes, I think that's a great idea to try and give a whirl. The biggest problem is on the Route 10 side when the vendors now park in the road to get their stuff out of their cars, or park across the road and try to
walk across the road.
go from, those that park at the historian's building, now we're trying to dodge traffic on the corner.
yeah.
If whomever the parking person is, can spend more time on the Route 10 side to keep people from parking in the road while they unload, because,
Yeah,
Yeah,
there shouldn't be
well,
any
you
parking
know.
on the Route 10
Right,
side.
so
Ever.
so I totally agree with that, and if somebody parked, that was certainly not the majority of vendors people weren't parking on the common side, but if they can't park, how does that work, having to, so you're saying not even on the vendors
In
can't
front of
park in the
Dowd's?
legal parking in front of Dowd's, cause they have to walk across the street?
no, I mean, if they park on the Dowd side and walk across, that's fine, but it's when they park on the grass side.
Yeah, okay,
And I mean,
we're in support of that, yeah.
Last year wasn't bad until pickup, and then there was a line of at least 9 cars
Oh, at the
all
end
on
of
the grass,
on the wrong side,
on
okay.
the facing, you know, so now we're forcing southbound cars.
Yeah, that's bad,
know, I mean-
totally, no, that makes sense, just to make sure that we really have somebody
I
covering
think
the
that everybody
end.
just needs to realize that we're, you know, we're dealing, number one, with the main throughway.
Sure,
And now that the
Sure.
bridge is closed,
There's a lot more
the
traffic.
traffic count is tenfold
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it normally is.
okay, so wait, let me just,
Would it be helpful if, could we string, a
Absolutely, it should be roped.
it is
should be
roped, and it
off.
was, that's
It
why
is,
I'm
but they
trying, it
still
is
charge.
roped.
Still
Well,
charge
they
us?
just pick it up and.
Yeah, that's what I mean,
that's-
so like, we're not gonna put
I
a
have a
total
suggestion,
barricade
and
up.
we don't have to solve this here, and maybe
Right.
that's something we can talk
We can
about
talk
on
about it on Monday.
Have Sean join us too.
Yep.
Is having your vendors set up on the other side of the common instead of on the Route 10 side. Just make it all on one, you know,
There's too many there,
back
they're all the way
side of the-
around, they're on both sides of, there's just a lot of people, it's big,
Right.
there's a bunch of people,
Okay.
yeah.
The good news is, there's a lot of people.
It feels to me that, well, it is actually a really good thing for the town, so there are a lot of people coming, but, so I just wanna clarify the one piece, cause I totally get no parking on the road where there's no space for parking, that's horrible sounding. But the part about they're dodging traffic walking across the street, I think there is a place where
They're
we have
allowed
to
to do
handle
that.
it, okay, I was just gonna say, but
No,
that's
I
just,
mean, yeah,
It's not safe, but they're allowed to do that.
yeah, that's right, they.
I mean, Route 10 is very busy these days.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and we'll warn people to be careful when they're crossing the street. That just felt like a different
No,
level of, if they can't park on either side of the road, how do they get there?
Do they come and set up like an hour before it opens to the public?
They're able to come, just like,
Maybe
this is
they
like,
should
this is
be
following up on the flea market.
encouraged to do that, because then they could park on the backside, walk
The
across the
majority
common
of them
and
do
set
that,
up.
the majority of them do that, there were 50 vendors there, and so what we said, the line of like 4 or 5 or 6 that were doing the wrong thing, it was bad, it wasn't the majority of the vendors. So the majority of the vendors do come in, park somewhere else, bring their small things, you know, they have like a thing in their hand, they bring them or they drop them and they come back. The majority, that is what the majority of them do, and I know it.
As in all things, it's ruined for the majority by the small
A
number.
few people, I just wanted
who
you to
don't
know that
play,
the
right?
numbers, most people are actually doing that. There are a lot of people doing that, which is how it gets done. And then we just have to be more careful about having that lane where some people can park. The hard part for us is when someone says they're gonna be there for 5 minutes and they're not, and then that's a really hard thing for a volunteer to do when a person is, you know, they're not matching names to, that's just, you know, we're not policemen, we don't do that all the time, so
No,
as
I
hard
know,
as
but
we're
we
trying.
need to make an effort to be able to do that, because otherwise, I mean, the alternative is if we can't
Well, the parking
manage
spaces
that.
seems like a good, that seems like a really good one, I just sort of, that piece, it's
Dana,
not, they're
how
not
do you feel
trying.
about that?
As long as Sean is happy on.
We'll give it a
I
try.
mean, I think the one challenge with the parking spaces on the back is so that, you know, I mean, we're gonna try to limit it to like 30, which means
Between
that
20 and 30.
if 30 vendors, you know, if all of your vendors park back there,
No, we're not gonna
Now
let
we're-
vendors park there, we're gonna
Okay.
let vendors set up,
okay.
right, that's all, we
Yeah,
don't want,
the
no, we
hour
don't want.
ahead, I would encourage
No
them
vendors
to come
park, and I don't know
Okay.
if any vendors, I think we had one vendor, a person who was a representative of a vendor. I mean, this isn't vendors, right, these are organizations across, so
Right.
someone comes and like, I'm on their board, and they park, and then they find themselves standing at the booth and talking to a bunch of people, even though they weren't there as a vendor, do you know what I mean, it's just, it's a.
Oh, they can be there as a parking attendant.
Well, that's right, you're no kidding, well, that's right, we need to get more people, but it's just, it's fabulous and complicated, so appreciate your flexibility in thinking about how to get it done
Okay,
safely.
so Monday is the day we will have a big meeting,
Cool.
and how does the board feel about a tentative approval, at least for the Tide fundraiser, based on what the meeting comes up with on Monday? And then our next meeting, we can approve the big health and wellness fair, which is the big one.
Well, they're already,
Can we?
they're already advertising.
Yeah, I don't,
Oh.
that feels to me like, yeah, if you actually think there's a risk that you're gonna say no to this, that has to
You
be,
need to let them know, yeah.
I
Please let go.
don't think there's a risk, you're doing everything you can to make it happen, so. I think the intent of the board should be to. approve.
Yeah.
So you could approve it with the understanding that they will accept
we're gonna come
your
up with an
We're gonna come
agreement.
up with some solutions.
agreement or your solutions and,
Okay,
Thank you, that really, yeah. That's a help.
you're okay? You're on board with that?
Fine, yeah.
Okay, there you have it.
Perfect, thank you guys very much, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We give it one more shot.
Yeah.
We'll get the time for Monday, right? Jordan will,
Are you?
Jordan will set it up.
okay.
Yeah,
so I'm just doing a sense of the meeting for that.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Poor
Bye-bye.
Jordan, she just listens and finds out what's ahead for her.
Yes, busy afternoon,
It lets her
Jordan.
get warmed up.
All right. Don't wanna see this back again.
I know, it's so time consuming.
Okay, did that. Let's, how
Do you
about,
need some coffee, David?
let's move on to the not-for-profit exempt properties. We have,
Oh, my goodness.
this is this, this, okay. We have a letter dated August 8th from our assessor. Thank you, Jordan.
Your recommendation.
And it is a recommendation. And then we also have a review from 2 years ago from town council, about, just about all those same properties. And I think that Todd would like us to actually look at each of these properties that have gotten exemptions, that are tax exempt, and just have the board make decisions whether or not to accept or not accept what has been their status, so that he can recommend we make the decision.
Right, and let me give you this. The
You
per-
should have Todd's, but not your purple.
They have Todd's, yeah,
Yeah.
that one has purple comments that Jordan and I did from past, so
Okay.
as you do it, you can,
Okay,
Note
so
those.
we have number 4, John Thompson Way, which is the American Legion.
Lost you, Judy.
Number 1, on your, okay, on the list that you have, number 1 is map 201, lot 94-200.
Yeah.
Owned by the American Legion. They did not file a Form A9, so unless they can convince the Board of Selectmen that they were prevented from filing due to an accident, mistake, or misfortune, they cannot be exempt for 2023.
right.
That's Todd's comment. They were
What does
told,
the Form A9 say?
The Form A9 just identifies the property and what their mission is and whether they're charitable, educational, or,
And they're required to file that every year?
yes, yes.
and they were told by, town council years ago that it was not necessary for them to fill out the form. This is absolutely an accident, mistake, or misfortune. If something has changed and they must fill it out, they were not aware of it.
Right.
That's what we have for comment.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Laura said she agreed with the fact that you guys were giving them an exemption because the American Legion is just automatically exempt.
So,
So can they fill out the form and get it to us
They
later?
did,
They have, so
they
we,
did.
so we now have it.
We now have an A9, yes.
So on that basis, I'd be comfortable continuing their exempt status.
okay, how do you feel, Ben?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so the American Legion will continue as exempt. Okay.
Thank you.
Number 2,
Didn't realize we had a representative of the organization.
He's the boss.
map 414, lot 9-1000, and lot 26
Oh, my
How
neighbors.
Pond Lane. This property is owned by the Benedictine nuns. The house and immediate area are being used for religious purposes, however, the excess land should be prorated and taxed. And the comment is, yes, this is in the same as in past years. So they are taxed on 38.5 current use acres.
So
and
what's
they
that,
are-
like $1.98 or something?
It's
I don't know what our
$5,000.
taxable
Well, the assessed value is
Right.
$5,000.
So it's,
Yeah, so the tax is gonna
Little.
be like
it's very
$25.
little, right,
Yeah,
well,
it's
it's
pretty-
more than that, but still.
It's not
Yeah.
much. And the farm and the
And the
land that
house.
goes with it, yes, and the house
The house and the curtilage
is exempt.
right.
And that value is
They
590.
actually use that, do you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
they use
Never
it
seen
every
one
year.
there.
They come up, they have retreats, yeah,
I've seen nuns on the lower
Yeah.
road there anyways.
yep, yep.
Yeah, I never have it always is, you know, it's right next to, I'm adjacent to that property, so.
Yeah, stop and talk to them once in a while.
Mhm.
Nice people.
Yeah, they are.
So what do we wish to do with this? The same as in past years, some taxable, some exempt?
Whatever's recommended.
Okay, so, same as.
Sounds like Tom's recommendation is consistent with our past practice, so
It
we should
is.
continue that.
Yep. Okay, then, map 401 lots, 54, 55, 57, 59, 72, and 402 lot 26 are owned by the Upper Valley Land Trust. All this land is vacant and doesn't qualify, this is Todd, as tax exempt. See Alton Bay Camp Association versus Alton. The Supreme Court said in order for land to be exempt, it must be appurtenant to buildings being used and occupied for the charitable mission. However, it does qualify for assessment under RSA 79A or 79B and should be assessed as such if the owner so chooses.
So it's current use.
This is the Upper Valley Land Trust.
But here it looks like Laura disagrees with Tom.
And yes, we went through this 2 years ago, we researched it and discussed it with Laura, and we granted the exempt status.
Right.
So, do we wish to change the exempt status, or do we wish to continue as we discussed 2 years ago?
No, I'd listen to Laura.
Yeah. Between the assessor and the lawyer, I go with the lawyer.
And we also, Judy, remember, investigated Hanover and other towns that have Upper Valley Trust, Land Trust, and they're exempt.
We are exempt, okay. So, we are disregarding his recommendation and
And-
going with exempt status.
And just to be clear, his recommendation was that we tax them at current use rates. And
Correct.
so even if we did that, the amount of money that we're talking about is fairly, it's not very
Well,
much.
we have quite a bit of property, I suspect.
So
we'd
if
have
we were to
add
tax it
that.
at current use rates, well, what are we giving up, I guess is what I wanna know.
Okay,
1, 4, 5,
of course, it
800,
depends on
what the land is,
yeah, as far as
but-
the current use rates go, but.
so
What does
about
it
an
say on the card for
800,000,
value?
900,000 exempt total,
Oh, they're all separate.
but they are all
Right.
separate.
Those are the current use values. I mean,
I did, yeah, there's the assessed value, yes.
so, give me a minute, go on to the next one and I'll tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next one is map 402, lots 55 to 123, and 101 and 95, Dartmouth College Highway, owned by Crossroads Academy. It's exempt except for the excess acreage not being used. Todd says it should be assessed in current use. And the recommendation we got from council was treat it the same as in past years, which was to exempt the school buildings and a 1.94 school acre lot, and then tax 134 plus or minus acres at current use. You can't vote on
Yeah,
this
I'm
one.
gonna abstain from this one
So-
since I'm on the board of Crossroads. still.
Ben?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine with you?
Yeah.
So Crossroads will remain 2 exempt and 1 piece taxable at current use. Okay? 414, lots 49-02, 58-1001, 58-1002, so for heaven's sake, 61, and 2 lots in 61, Dartmouth College. This has been prorated over the years and in Todd's opinion should continue with status quo. Laura had said same as in past years for Dartmouth College.
Can you just explain to me what this land is and what they do with it?
This is out, where we have the ski area.
Mhm.
The lifts and the trails are taxable, most of it at current use rate. The lodge, no, and the lodge is, part of the lodge is taxable, and part of the lodge acreage is exempt. And there's also another piece that's exempt, which is 82.6 acres in current use.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, there's a percentage of the lodge that they claim is educational because of the students, they come out there and they have classes and they do certain things. It's a very small percentage of the lodge. They pay, quite a bit in taxes.
and the taxable amount is assessed at 1,932,900 plus 5,500, so 940 roughly, $1,940,000 is taxable.
And the Lyme kids ski for free.
Yeah.
That's all part of that. We have a written,
Based on a
agreement with
very
them.
old agreement
Yeah.
from when the skiway was established. So the
Actually,
recommend,
that agreement went back to that was the terms of which the landowner would sell
right,
the land to the Dartmouth.
Right.
Dartmouth keeps trying to make it's a deal with the town, but it never was.
Mhm.
right,
Really, that was a condition on
The landowner made
Yeah.
when he sold the land to the town.
the Dartmouth, you mean?
To Dartmouth.
To
He didn't-
Dartmouth.
Well, he didn't,
No, I sold to Dartmouth, yeah, and
it was between it was a deed
between the
restriction,
landowner and
yeah.
Dartmouth.
that's correct.
So we need to always remember that, so
Yeah,
the town
because
isn't being
they
mean.
tend to forget that fact.
Dartmouth does tend to forget it,
Yeah.
Yes,
but every new person that comes, we remind them.
Okay.
so recommendation, same as in past years, which is to have some taxable, some exempt. Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Dina, do you have an
Not
answer?
yet, she's
Oh,
giving me
oh,
the
she's
current
getting
use
it.
rate.
Okay, next on the list is the Lyme Baptist Church out on Dorchester Road. The church should be exempt, but the vacant land identified as map 420, lot 26 should be taxable under current use. And our recommendation from legal was same as in past years.
Mhm.
Is that the vacant land in front of the church that they use?
No,
for
no, they
parking?
own a lot.
They have
They own
They have a
100-acre lot out on
79-acre
Dorchester.
lot that's in
Oh,
current
okay.
use.
Right.
It's small.
All
The
right.
value is $3,600, that's what they pay taxes on.
All right, so we're.
In the church and
Not
the
what we're talking
vestry,
about.
and 2.8 acres are exempt.
Right.
So we good to go with that recommendation, same as
Yeah.
in past years? Okay. Let's see, Lyme Baptist Church. Next is the Lyme Congregational Church. The parsonage should be prorated, making the excess acreage taxable. The carriage sheds, I'm not sure what religious purpose this property has, except parking for the church. This is according to our assessor.
Well, it's still, as we've said before, it adds value to the town.
And as such, he would say it's necessary, the parking, however, if it's not being used for church services parking, I would say this property is taxable. You may want to consult town council on this matter. The church should be exempt, the Lyme House is used as a parish hall, and I would suggest exempt. And our council recommended same as in past years, which is to exempt the parsonage, the horse sheds, the church, and the Lyme House. So,
And can I just interject, part of the reason the horse sheds is the town of Lyme owns the land, the church does not.
okay,
And it would be kind of silly to have a church say it's too expensive to tear down a horse shed.
Right.
Yeah, we've spent a lot maintaining those. So we have consensus that we're gonna stay exempt as we have in past years?
Yeah.
Okay. Congregational church. Then we have the Lyme Nursery School. Our assessor says there isn't enough information to make a recommendation for this property. If it's being used as a school, the Board of Tax and Land Appeals has said it may be exempt. However, if it is used as a daycare, he doesn't believe it is exempt. He will need an inspection of the property to know for certain. Again, Laura or town council's recommendation was to treat it as the same as in past years, which is a nursery school, 0.87 acres exempt, and the assessed value is $416,100.
And again, that came from, us investigating and requiring additional information from the Lyme Nursery School to show that they have educational programs, not just daycare. And they did prove that.
So what do we wish to do with this one?
I don't have any trouble with it.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
Okay, so pathway of the River Valley, map 408, lot 25. Our assessor says he needs more information to make a recommendation. He's unsure of the charitable nature and if it is being used for its purpose. Again, town council said you have kept it the same as in past years.
What is this?
It's a
Pathways
health
down here.
facility,
Right down the road.
it's right down the road, it's, I thought it was state-owned.
It's,
It's a
well,
state.
no, well, it's, they take in state, it's actually owned by a nonprofit. I can't remember the other name.
But it's,
Is it UDS?
UDS, used to be
Yes.
UDS,
Okay.
now it's Pathways of the Upper Valley. They
That-
have,
It's a
interesting
facility
story.
for, yes, for
for
challenged.
very challenged individuals who,
That blew up
Need
when they
medical
wanted to
care.
put it in there, everybody was worried there was gonna
Be a
postpone.
jail.
And there'd be crazy people walking all over town and, actually we had.
More than we already have?
yeah.
Well, there was a facility that had impaired people walking all over town, at the time nobody cared.
Right,
And, then they put it in there, nobody knows where it is anymore.
Yeah,
well, these
right.
individuals need 24-hour round-the-clock care,
They're,
Medical care.
they're bedridden, so
Yes.
it's,
yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say we go with exemption.
yes.
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
And the entity owning and operating the property is tax exempt as a 501c3 charity.
It's my understanding, I'd have to look at
I'm
this.
pretty sure they're tax exempt.
I know. Jordan's getting the, monetary amount for the current use. We have the code, but I don't have the per acre thing,
Okay,
so I can't figure that out. Okay, pathways. Yes, charitable, under RSA 72:23(5).
okay, next up, the
Yeah, I'm
Lyme.
just looking at their website.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It says there.
Yeah.
They accept tax deductible contributions, so presumably they're exempt under
That's right.
501c3.
That's what I said, financial statements.
So David, you're good with pathway?
Yeah.
Okay, and Ben was, so that
Yeah.
one's good. Lyme historians is next up, map 201, lot 77. Failed to file timely a Form A-12 before June 1, which unfortunately RSA 72:232-C says they shall be denied abatement in this case. And a note that we have from council says that A9 was in was filed in a timely fashion, but it is an educational group. I don't know what that means.
Well, the difference is that if it's a charitable, you have to file an A9 and an A12. If you're an educational, you only have to file an A9. We asked for an A12 also, but you don't have to. And the A12 date is different than the A9. It's absolutely ridiculous, but the A12 date is June 1st, I think. The other date is April 15th, and yeah, they make it more complicated than need be, but.
Okay, so.
So you're saying that they don't need to file an A12, which is what Todd's objecting to, that they didn't file.
Well, I think they check charitable and educational, but I don't know that, I'd have to look and see, but yes, if they're educational, they do not have to. I don't know that the Lyme Historians is a 501c3.
I have no idea. They are, in the past, have been exempt
That's right.
on the Main Street property and on the Baker Hill Road, 0.19 acres.
Right.
But they have been taxed on an apartment within the
Right.
Main Street property,
That's right.
which is a percentage calculation.
Yeah, charitable and educational, they are both.
So they probably should have filed the A12.
No, if they are an educational, they don't need to, though, either way. This also was, again, an agreement that was worked out with them as far as the percentage of, paying percentage for the apartment that they
Yeah.
have.
So what do we wish to do with the Lyme historians? In the past, they were mostly exempt except for the apartment. David?
And I guess that's fine. I'm just looking at the Lyme Historian's website to see if I can determine whether they actually even exist as an, as an independent legal entity. I guess they own property, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, in the future, if they're filing one form, it would seem like they could file them both together at the same time, unless there's an extraordinary cost to it.
well, we would, sometimes people can't file the A12 because they don't have their 990, I think it is, form. When you're a charitable, you have to wait for that, and then sometimes they, depending on who's doing your audit and who's doing your tax stuff, it could be April, May, June. I know we have one person who didn't get theirs till late, so they
Yeah.
didn't file it.
Their website says they're a nonprofit
I know,
corporation.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't know if that's right or not. It's a little bit,
well, if we go ahead and exempt them and there is a challenge, then it's
Yeah.
on us, because
Right.
Todd said he couldn't make a
Right.
recommendation, so. Are we willing to accept that? Yeah, I'm seeing heads nod, okay. They will stay the same as they have in the past. The Center for Northern Woodlands, map 201 lot 30, this property was recently granted partial property exemption because they weren't using the entire building for their mission. It would be ideal to obtain an inspection to verify the building is being used for the charitable mission. Absent that, we might want to consult town council, but status quo may be the answer for 2023. This is our assessor speaking. Then our attorney said a site visit of all the exempt properties would be a good idea. But again, this is the same as in past years.
Actually, that was me, the purple is me.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But yes, we remember, went to them after the fact 2 years
Yep.
ago, and the attorney said that, yes, they were educational, and then you again met with them and made a deal to
Well, and at the point
tax them
over
for part.
time, yeah, but now they have turned the whole building, I believe, into.
No.
No, it's still not the whole building?
No, they still pay
Oh, okay, that's not
percentage, and
listed.
it's not listed that right way on this list.
Okay, so
But they
we
do.
have some exemption and some taxed. We want to continue that for this year?
Yeah.
Okay. and Todd has
Would
said.
they be would they be willing to let Todd come inspect, or?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Todd should inspect all of these, but
Yeah.
yes, of course they would. They're very welcoming.
Yeah, I think we should inspect them all. It's time.
I think that, yeah,
Okay, and the last one that we had last year, and it is not on Todd's list, Ben, the cutie bears.
You're on your own on this, cause
We're
You're-
both involved.
I'm on the board there, so I can't, we both have to
you're on
abstain.
the board of Ben.
Yeah. He's an expert in nonprofits.
Well, I'm sorry, but you don't get an exemption then.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry that you
Did
don't
you
get
see
it.
his serious face?
I'm looking at you
Well,
wondering
no, I have
where
an
you're
answer
going.
for that. I'm sorry, but you just lost 2 select board members.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's it, I'm done
no. We may
too.
need to ask legal about
We should
that.
That's all
probably
I
check
have
with
to do to
it.
get out of this?
We should check with legal on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And make sure, would you make sure that everything is filed the way it should be filed?
It is now, yeah.
Okay.
It is.
It is, okay, we're good with that. All right, so, and do we have an answer yet on?
No. I think Jordan's panicking, she's frantically looking for we just have to look up the codes, because I don't know what code is, how much the,
Crossroads
Yeah.
Academy is the one.
right,
Well,
oh, you know what?
No, it was the Upper Valley Land Trust.
No, it wasn't, yeah, that was the 9, I wrote what it was, hold on.
I thought it was the
You guys can
Crossroads
move on.
Academy, there were 2 for
No.
Crossroads, and the one that's 402.
No, it
excess
was Upper
acreage.
Valley, I added all that up,
Okay, so Crossroads got a,
that got approved, I have yes. On my list.
where's the Upper Valley? Okay, so I skipped a group. But we said because Hanover and other places exempts them.
Right.
And
He
we
was just curious.
researched it, so Upper Valley, where did Upper Valley go on here?
I may have to give you the amount at a later date
Okay, that's all right.
of Upper Valley, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I just make
This-
a comment that this review is taking place because of Todd's difficulties in the town and city of Ospey, and last year we did not review.
We did review, but
Yes, you
not,
did.
I remember
not, we did
reviewing
review, but not in this manner.
Yeah.
We
correct.
You
individually-
review it every year, Todd gives you a
Yeah, I
recommendation.
know, but we didn't vote on things, we did that 2 years ago.
Oh, you did, because you sign this every year. We have that from last year, signed by you guys. I'm sorry.
But we didn't spend this amount of time. We
No.
looked at it, we agreed that we would do the same as we had
Right.
done, and,
Okay.
So what's the concern here, is that somebody would file a lawsuit against the town saying you're giving these people a tax exemption and they don't? You
Well, here's the
shouldn't.
concern, is exactly what happened in Ossipee, is that something was exempt. Todd had recommended that it not be exempt. It went to, somebody complained to the BTLA, it went to the BTLA, and the BTLA is scolding Ossipee because they shouldn't have.
I saw
So
all that,
that's the
but
whole
the
concern.
origin of is that somebody was unhappy about it.
Right, if
yes,
somebody doesn't support or believe that that property should be exempt,
Somebody's always
they could
unhappy.
challenge it at the BTLA.
Okay.
True story.
But you guys are the ultimate decision makers, so
right.
that's why it comes to you.
So I'm just, okay,
Right.
All right, so we have one property on hold. I'm happy to go with what we have done in the past, because I know we have looked into it, but we can certainly take up that property at our next meeting.
I'm happy to continue with what we're doing in the past too. Seems like that's reasonable. I just was curious as to what the amount of tax would be if we were to
If we were to
tax
change it.
at
Right.
current use.
At current use, yep.
Okay, so, you're okay with that, Dan, for the Upper Valley Land Trust, so we have completed everything and made our decisions to stay as what we have done. We have one left to look at. Well, I get to look at. And I'm not sure I have any authority as an individual, but I certainly go with the fact that we have looked at all these
That's
properties.
interesting, we should ask Laura what happens when two board members.
That's gonna be my first email when the meeting gets done.
Well, you would think that the lawyer's judgment
Yes,
could be in
Yeah.
a position
Yeah.
to.
I think can defend it, but one never
As long as it's
knows.
done by independent people.
Right.
I have no tie to the cute little fuzzies.
No. Well, remember Laura, her recommendation was she checked with Walter to make sure, because she thought they were so cute, she didn't wanna just say yes, because they were cute bears.
Okay, we have done that.
Yeah.
Now, we have another person sitting here, and I'm sorry, who's been waiting for us to talk about
Electric stuff.
electric stuff.
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
I should know this, but could you tell me the last name of town council?
Well, it's Mitchell Municipal Services,
Okay.
and they're in Laconia, and it's Walter Mitchell, Laura Spector Morgan,
Got it.
and Joe
Joe Driscoll.
Driscoll.
Driscoll, and then they have a new Naomi
Oh, yes, Naomi
Butterfield,
Butterfield, yes.
She's not new.
newish, she's the newest girl on the block.
Is she newer than Joe?
Yep,
Oh.
yep.
But she's been around.
This would be a
for
good
few
time for
years.
me to just state that individual town residents can call Mitchell Municipal Services, but they will not get any answers because only specific people are authorized to discuss things with town council.
Unless maybe you hire them as your attorneys, in which case maybe they.
Well, then there might be a conflict.
Yeah. And committee members too.
Yes, committee members can't,
It
yes,
has to all
it's
come
very
through,
limited, either the board,
Right.
either Dina, or I believe the chair of the, or not the chair,
No, David Robbins,
and the chair of the planning board can call them, I believe. No?
it's not on the list, no.
Ah, okay.
David does that for them.
Okay. So, I just know that there have been a couple of phone calls over the past few months.
And emails.
And emails, yes. So, Lyme Electric Aggregation Committee,
It's a mouthful.
it is a mouthful. So, report on the draft is what we are here to talk about, and also the CPCNH board meeting. David, you were gonna do some follow-up questioning, and, did you get any? Oh, you did.
Shame.
Would you like to update us?
I spoke to Joe Driscoll about this agreement. Judy, you had sent me your comments. I had some questions and comments based on my review of the agreement. I didn't get anything from Ben, but most of my questions were just, there's places in this draft agreement where we're referring to a town administrator, which we don't have. And also, I was curious about what Lyme Community Power, which is a capitalized term and throughout this agreement, what that is. Is it a separate legal entity or is it a?
It's a committee,
Yeah, is
I
it,
believe.
is it a committee? Well, I
Lyme
don't know, it's
Electric-
never defined in here and I don't know what
Okay.
it was, sort of specifically legally what that is. So I talked to Joe for, I don't know, maybe a half hour or so about this, and he was sort of not very clear about any of this stuff either. In addition, he sort of told me he didn't know to what extent we would be able to amend this. So he was gonna follow up on that.
Okay,
Like, for example, Judy, you had a comment about maybe wanting to, would it be possible to make this a purely opt-in system as opposed to an opt-out system?
right,
I don't know the answer to that, and Joe didn't know the answer to that either. Another question that I posed to him was just from a practical perspective, administering this seems like it's some work, like you would need a person to do this in town government. And so, you know, it seems to me, if you're talking about Nashua or Portsmouth or even Hanover, they have a bigger, more, you know, they have more people, they have a
Right.
bigger government, city government. We're a small town, you know, so I was trying to get a sense from Joe about, you know, how much work is involved in administering a program like this. He didn't really know. What I got from him sort of was that he's had lots of clients who have signed up to be part of CPCNH, but that he also has lots of clients that are where we are, but have decided, why don't we wait a year or two and kind of see how this thing evolves out and what it looks like in actual operation, because there isn't a lot of operational experience with it yet, it's all very new. My concerns with it right now are, you know, you read through this and it looks, well, there's a couple. One is, it looks like administering this is not no work.
Yeah,
And so then you sort of have to ask, well, what does that mean? Do we need to hire somebody? If we were to move forward to this, does the town of Lyme then need to hire someone to administer the electrical program? And like, exactly what is that going to entail? If people have power going out in the middle of a storm, are they gonna be calling the town office and, or are they gonna be calling CPCNH or, and you can't, at least I don't really understand how the administrative details of this would work in detail. Maybe you could explain it.
I can try. Can I ask a quick question? Who's
Sure.
Joe Driscoll?
Joe Driscoll is town council.
He's the other
He's
guy.
He's the lawyer at Mitchell Municipal who has the most, we're told, has the most expertise with this and has been advising us about CPCNH matters. And I think from talking to him, I get the sense that he's got, I don't know, a dozen or 24 towns that they represent that are at various stages in trying to work through these same sorts of issues. The other question I had in reviewing this stuff was, it looks like the way it's currently set up, you only move forward if CPCNH can offer you electrical rates that are lower than what you're getting from Eversource. But it wasn't clear to me that there was any sort of promise that that would continue to be the case. So at an onset, you get a lower rate, but is that always gonna be the case, or a year or two down, could we find ourselves in a position where CPCNH rates are higher than Eversource? And that sort of confused me a little bit too, because it looks like throughout this, when you read through this, you get the sense that you kind of blow Eversource out of the water in terms of the economics of it, that you get a much better rate. But that's at least a little bit surprising to me. I mean, they're a for-profit company, presumably they're trying to offer competitive rates. They're, you know, how is it that CPCNH is able to beat them so handily on electrical rates, and, you know, how do you know that that will continue to be the case? So anyways, I'm sorry, that's a little bit sort of helter-skelter,
I
but
think that that's fine. I mean, it's a very complicated document. And I read through it several times, because when I first started to read through it for the last meeting, my eyes crossed. As everyone knows, I'm not all that bright, so, but it did bring up some questions, and that's why I wanted David to follow through, because he could talk more succinctly with our council. I do, for me, and situations that I've seen where you only have opt-out availability of things, people get into something that they don't know they're getting into. They don't understand it going in. All of a sudden, they're with a different provider and they're not happy. How did they get there? And then how do they get out? And for me, that was a really big question. Could that be changed? I have a feeling it can't, because I think this has been set up and it's started to go forward, and that's the way they want it to be.
That was a real big question, actually, when talking to Joe, is to what extent, if we wanted to move forward to this, do we have the flexibility to make changes? For instance, there's provisions in this agreement that relate to terminating the agreement that are sort of unclear, I think, and Joe thinks, and you wanna tighten that up. Can you even do that? And that was one of the things Joe was gonna follow up on. He was gonna
Okay.
try to find out to what extent, because, you know, CPCNH is entering into this agreement with towns all over the state,
Right,
and their position may be, hey buddy, it's our way or the highway.
right,
You know, they may not wanna
Well,
have 47 different versions of this thing floating
exactly,
around.
and
Or they
that's
may be
really-
flexible and willing to make amendments if, you know, or negotiate changes. I don't know if you know the answer to that question. Joe did not. He was gonna try to suss that out a little bit and get back to me, and I emailed him again, when was it, Dina, Monday or Tuesday, to just sort of see if I could get an answer by today, but I've not heard back from him.
yeah, so that's kind of where we're stuck. I guess not feeling comfortable to sign anything at this point, and
Well-
I kinda like the idea of waiting a year, but I know you folks are, a lot of people are putting a lot of time into this, or a few people are putting a lot of time into this, perhaps is more correct, and we did vote to go forward.
Well, the other thing is, I don't think we signed this, right? I mean, my understanding is that we would make a recommendation on it or say what we wanna say, but then it has to go in front of town meeting. I think this is a town meeting thing and not a select board thing, and, you know, like, my view would be, I'm not sure if I'm in favor of this the way it is. We might, and I'm not sure to what extent we can amend it to sort of
Right.
respond to concerns that I have, but, I'm also not sure that I would, on that basis, my preference might be to say, I have real hesitations about this and express that and then let people vote on it.
Yeah, it would be easy to vote to support it, because in our minds, this could potentially be a really good thing. But it could be like some other things that are sort of voted on but not enforceable, where the town has said, yeah, we like this goal, or we like that goal, or we like the other goal. But individual, like the solar,
Well, but no, but if we-
individual people aren't indebted to do it, but here, if the
If
town
the town votes on it, then we're
then we're
moving
in there.
forward,
It's
we're
sink or
moving forward
swim.
and starting to buy power from CPCNH at some
Right.
point, and I
Right,
think
well, it's
that's,
the
is that
committee's,
is there a step after this to actually, set up the details of a power plan?
There is a cost-sharing agreement where you actually talk about, you know, how do you wanna set this up? Well, I think I can probably answer many of these, perhaps not all of the questions. And maybe starting from the top, my understanding is that the entity, right now we have the Lyme Electric Aggregation Committee.
Right.
5 volunteers who are trying to put this thing together. If it passes, and by that I mean if the town votes to accept this, then I think it's safe to think of it as Lyme Community Power, which in fact is a legal entity. Because that's the way the municipal RSA is set up.
But so to form a legal entity, you gotta actually do something. Like, they don't just spring out of nowhere, you gotta file articles of incorporation or.
Well, that's one of the reasons that, well, 2 things. One of the reasons that Judy's eyes glazed over, just like everybody's eyes on the committee's glazed over the first time through this. It's the reason we decided there's no way the Lyme Electric Aggregation Committee, affectionately known as LEAP, or LEAK, could do this on our own, which is why Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire is so attractive. Because they filed those letters, incorporation letters, they are a legal entity. They have now, I think, 35 towns that have signed up with them. 10 of whom are actually getting power now from them, from their, buying power.
Is Plainfield doing that yet?
Plainfield is doing
See,
that.
that would be another thing I thought, apologies for interrupting, it would be really helpful if there were somebody in Plainfield who's actually administering
talk to
this,
Steve
that we
Halloran.
could talk to and say, how much work is this, and
Right.
how's it actually working in practice? Because it's hard to get that from the paper.
And if I
Yeah.
could just also interject, we could talk to Steve Halloran, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to us. My big concern is, I think, Dina's maxed out. I mean, there's not an individual,
Well, if she wasn't going on vacation.
I know for 6 months.
Well, I think you have to be extremely knowledgeable on
Right,
this
I
if
don't-
you're gonna do this. Hanover hired somebody.
Yeah.
They have somebody to do this.
And that person that they hired had been doing something similar to this on a part-time basis
Right.
for several years. So it's, yeah, anyway, that's another big
I'm-
concern.
I'm still unclear as to, to convince the town meeting to convince me would be understanding what the savings are, or is it all about picking, greener sources of power?
I think it's twofold.
Yeah, this agreement contemplates
Let's-
both. But, and I understand your point about contracting with CPCNH to actually do the administration work and do the power, but this agreement expresses the idea that there is something called Lyme Community Power that contracts with CPCNH in some way. And I don't know what Lyme Community Power is. Does that mean we have to form a separate legal entity to do this, or is that just a committee of the town of Lyme? And it isn't just the Power Aggregation Committee, because that's also talked about as a separate thing in this, and I understand what that is, but you're saying those two would become the same thing maybe,
Yeah.
or, okay.
Yeah, so basically the function, if this passed, and we were actually signed up with CPCNH to get some, and by we, I mean only the Lyme residents who choose to do this. So I'll get to that in a minute, because it answers your question
Okay,
about
good.
opt-out, opt-in. The next thing that the Lyme Electric Aggregation Committee, shortened to Lyme Community Power, would do is tell CPCNH what are the levels of what are the levels of power supply that we want to offer. So for example, Hanover, fairly well-to-do town, they have 4 levels. The basic, I think they call it Granite Basic, is the one that optimizes economics. It's guaranteed to be cheaper than Eversource. The highest one, which I think they call Green 100, is you could actually opt to get 100% of your power from a clean renewable source. And each person in Hanover that has signed up with CPCNH gets to choose which of those 4 levels, because they obviously come with different price points, they want.
Could there be an option that's just pure coal-fired?
Yes,
Well, much the
move-
same as Ben was saying, then you'd lose 5 members of the Lyme Electric Aggregation
Move
Committee.
to West Virginia,
But
you'll
if
be
you
all
don't
set.
sign up, they just automatically put you in one.
I'm sorry?
In Hanover, if you don't sign up, they automatically put you in one.
Right,
Right.
and that's the whole point about opting out. So, the RSA is set up so that you can do this as an opt-out. And it would be the responsibility of the committee that I'm on to make sure that if the town votes yes, that everybody in town that has an electric account would get either access to the website where you can sign up or sign out, a phone call. We would have to make sure that would be the guarantee part. And the answer is I call Ben or I send Ben the web link, and Ben goes on and decides, do I want to stay with whoever it is? And we only have 2 choices in this town, so the cooperative and Eversource.
Well, but, sorry to interrupt again, but
Yep.
the cooperative and Eversource are treated differently in this agreement. Under this agreement,
Yep.
if you're with the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative, then you have to opt into this agreement. the default position is you stay with New Hampshire Electric Cooperative. If you're with Eversource, that's flipped. So if you're with Eversource, the default is you flip into this agreement and you have to opt out in order.
So
And
this
and
is-
that kind
this
of
is an
troubled me a little
example.
bit too, like what's the justification for treating the
Yep.
two different suppliers 180 degrees different?
I can't answer that one. In the very beginning, both were opt-out. And then what they discovered is that the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative is really a cooperative, much the same way as the Community Power Coalition is a cooperative. The models are different. You know, the voting power resides with the people that get power from them. And so, and they are able to keep their prices lower than Eversource, for the most part. So what they've done in terms of amending this is they've said to the towns, let's call them wave 2 towns, like Lyme, that are just getting into this, not the first ones, the 10 that are getting their power. Why don't we rewrite this so that the co-op people have the option of joining CPCNH, because there still might be some savings, but they don't have to, you know, call anybody. They just, you know, they stay with, if they want to stay with the co-op, they stay with the co-op. They don't need to make a phone call, they don't need to sign up. That's it. If they want to go to CPCNH, they go to the same website and they say, yeah, I want to be there. So, and the reason for opt-out is that all across the country, states that are doing this recognize that there's more success in signing people up if it's opt-out. You force people to look into this and find out, can I benefit? How can I benefit? How much money might I save if I sign up for this one? Can I, you know, I wanna go greener, but I can't afford, you know, to put a solar panel on my house. Is this a possibility? And so there's an education process that happens, and I think that's where the committee would end up spending much of our time, especially to sell the program, because I can imagine, you know, especially in a state that has a motto that's live free or die, nobody wants to be told where they're getting their power.
Well,
But who
you
wouldn't
know,
wanna be
Matt,
told they have choices? Excuse me?
well, as a matter of fact, you're pulling the electric off the grid and you can't separate it out as it's coming in.
Well, that's an interesting, yeah, I mean, you can't trace electrons.
No.
You're absolutely right, but.
But
what
you're putting your emphasis on green power, so it's more encouraged.
Right, and you're also creating a market for more green power. The other distinction, I think, David, you asked, you know, are people gonna be calling Dina when she's not on vacation, when their power goes out? And the answer is, the people who own the wires and own the lines, so in our city, our town, Eversource and the New Hampshire Co-op, still own that, and they're still responsible. So when my power goes out, I call Eversource. Even if
The
I'm
phone
getting.
line's not also.
What? Right. So there's no, so for instance, when you get your Eversource bill, there's a supply breakdown and there's a distribution cost breakdown. And if I signed up with CPCNH, I'd get a bill and the supply side would come from CPCNH, but the distribution side, including the state tax for, you know, New Hampshire Saves, et cetera, would still come from Eversource. So yes, it's complicated, but towns are making it work. And Ben, to answer your question, Enfield decided, for example, because in their town, most of those people are not well off, they're low to medium income people, that their primary concern was economic. And that's how they structured it and how they sold it to the town. So, you know, if we got to that point, we would, when we're choosing tiers of how you buy your power, we would sit down with you folks and say, how do we want to do this? Do we want to have just 3, basic, granite, kind of a middle of the road, maybe 50%, and then there are some people who may want 100%. That will change over time, I'm sure. The answer to your question, my understanding, and again, we can, well, let me go here first. is that you can, in terms of amending the agreement, you could amend how you structure the supply levels. You can get out of this agreement as a town anytime you want. Whether that takes a town vote or whether the select board can do it is a question I would have to ask CPCNH. I don't know the answer to that. The town administrator, you know, everybody on the committee knows Dina, and we know how much vacation she takes. So we don't foresee that this is going to be a lot of work in terms of the town administrator. But I can certainly call Enfield and Plainfield and find out exactly what their responsibility are.
That would be, I think, really helpful, because you don't get from this agreement
Sure.
like the sort of granular detail about what does it take to actually administer this thing. And, you know, we have a pretty small and very efficient town government, but if you're adding 40 hours a week of work per week, then we'd have to hire somebody and understand what.
Especially on a topic we know nothing about.
Right, it would be,
So.
I mean, if it was 10 hours a week, maybe we would have a volunteer who would do it. But Dina's pretty busy.
Jordan is too.
And, well, pretty much everybody that works here is pretty busy.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not sure what would
It's-
happen.
It could be very challenging to learn what it is
Sure.
and to administer it, so,
I mean, I can tell you that CPCNH does all the billing.
mhm.
So I'm trying to, you know, in reading, having read that 5 or 6 times, that
Yeah.
agreement, I'm not sure there's actually a whole lot for you to do except to be designated to, you know, ask questions or,
The contact person.
you know, that we had to go to you to get permission for Eversource to
Right.
send us
Right,
all the people on their
Right.
account.
right.
Right.
I don't know how long that
Yeah.
took you, but it sounded like
An
maybe it was
email.
email, right?
It's an
So
email.
if
That
it's
would
that
be
kind
really
of stuff.
helpful to actually
Yeah.
talk to someone who's working,
Sure.
and who's in phase 1 or tier 1,
Yeah.
the first group of towns, to actually see what sort of workload, if any. It may be that there is none, but it'd be nice to understand, in fact, we have to understand
Sure.
that before moving forward is, you know,
Yeah.
what does this entail in terms of an expansion of town government or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, unintended consequences. I know we had the vote, which you put up quite a few years ago, about the town becoming greener, and I certainly had a disagreement with pellets, because you're cutting the trees that store carbon, and you're using them for heat. I still can't swallow that. Logging, you know, if you're building furniture, building buildings, you're storing carbon for long periods of time, 200 or 300 years sometimes. But if you put it up in smoke, all you're doing is creating the problem, making it worse. And then in the south, where they're cutting, their pellets have become a commodity, just like oil and coal and everything else, they're shipping it to Europe and annihilating the forests of the
Yep.
south. So those have big concerns, you know, the town voted because, oh yeah, we wanna be green. But I have big questions
Right,
still
but they
today
didn't, yeah,
about.
and they didn't, in that particular vote, they didn't vote on increasing pellets, for instance. They just voted on clean renewables. So the
But that-
definition of renewable now and clean has changed in the last 5 years.
Right.
So has it gotten
as
to
the-
my side, it's come over to
Yep.
my side?
But as far as burning wood, yes, absolutely. So, and there's no question in my mind, so this is totally personal, that at some point, we're gonna have to stop burning fossil fuels.
Oh, I agree
Right?
with that, but it
So-
doesn't happen
so-
overnight.
Exactly. So there's the complication. There's where it gets really complicated. But it seems to me that we've got a nuclear reactor up there in the sky, that if you can capture that, and there's no, you know, the fourth law of ecology is there's no such thing as a free lunch. So all those precious metals that go into those solar trackers, et cetera, have to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on forever and I won't do that. But I am saying that this seems like a good step in a forward movement where individuals still get to choose. Do I wanna save money? How much money do I wanna save? CPCNH can get better prices, certainly because they bid on it more often than the big, not the co-op, but Eversource bids twice a year.
Mhm.
And they lock their rates in every 6 months. So that's why last August was
Yeah.
so terrible for
It was
Eversource.
delightful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But,
Co-op just
so
lowered their
that's
rates.
sort of another one of my questions was,
Yeah.
when you look at this agreement, it provides that you don't move forward with CPCNH unless they're beating Eversource's rate by a certain percentage. But if Eversource is locking in rates for longer periods of time, does that mean that you might beat them when you enter into this, but then 3 months later find that the markets have fluctuated in such a way such that Eversource is actually cheaper and you're sort of out of luck?
Absolutely possible. I mean, I wouldn't sit here and tell you that the markets and energy aren't gonna go like this forever. But I think that the nice part about this program is if you are in fact someone who wants to watch that, there are people that watch the stock market daily and play it. There are people who just say, okay, I'm gonna put my money in here and 40 years later, I hope I can retire. It's not dissimilar, in my opinion, to the energy game, right? So do you wanna lock into a nonprofit cooperative group whose goal is to both save people money and to produce greener electricity, and let them do the work for you, even knowing that some 3-month period, I might be paying more than Eversource?
That's what I wanna understand though. What I wanna understand in this agreement is it the case, it is the case manifestly that you only you only start with CPCNH if you're getting a better rate. But is there a risk that you could find yourself in a situation where you get a worse rate?
I think so. But my but would be, if it becomes worse and, the CPCNH publishes their rate to its customers, and if I see that I'm gonna be paying 5 cents more for CPCNH than Eversource, I pick up the phone and I call them and I say I'm going back to Eversource.
Okay.
It does take the individual responsibility, to track that, which is why my analogy to the.
On the same level, can we go back to town meeting and when this thing shows us things that we didn't expect and say, all right,
My understanding is that the town could pull its whole residents out of this on an annual basis. You review it, you decide.
Yes, but the one proviso there is that to the extent that CPCNH enters into arrangements where they're doing infrastructure or making changes where they incur costs, I think the town is then on the hook for its share of those costs, even if it subsequently withdraws from the arrangement, I think.
Well, not the town, I mean, basically.
It would be
what-
the ratepayers, the people who
So
signed up for
there's,
it.
just like, right now, we pay a percentage of our electric bill to New Hampshire Saves. Everybody, that 0.032 percentage or whatever it is they tack on. CPCNH does the same thing, and they build up capital reserve fund, much like you folks do, so that they can hope on that 3 month where maybe they can't beat Eversource, they can take some of that reserve.
Yeah.
Or, we could say, as a select board and a Lyme Electric Aggregation Committee, we want to tack on 0.032 for everybody in CPCNH, build that reserve up, and then build a community solar farm. Use it to put, the solar panels on the school don't work anymore. Inverters shot. So the energy committee's trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now? And we'll talk about this Monday. But you could end up with a reserve, and I think, my understanding is that's the infrastructure they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't have just to be clear, I don't have a view on this, or maybe I do, but that's irrelevant. But what's important to me is that if we're gonna take something like this to town meeting, all of that stuff should be clear. People should be able to understand it and assess it
Sure.
and,
No, you're asking great questions, David.
And
The big picture, and I know we're gonna run out of time, the big picture for us is, the next step for this agreement is to go to the technical people at CPCNH to make sure that the way the 5 Lyme residents on this committee have altered their template is correct. And until we have that, we can't have the requirement is we have 2 public hearings
Right.
to explain this to people. And I don't wanna get backed into late fall before we have a chance to do that. So maybe there's a possibility that you say, okay, let's send this to CPCNH, have their technical folks look it over, make sure we've crossed the right Ts and dotted the right Is. We'll work on the questions you just raised and any others you wanna send us. Cause we're gonna have many times to come back to this before we actually ask for a warrant article, right? And our goal would be to have the select board endorse putting this to the town on a warrant article, as opposed to going to, however many citizens we have, but
Right.
yeah,
I don't know if that makes.
makes perfect sense. One thing, definitely there's remains references to a town administrator in this agreement, and that,
Yeah, we'll figure that out for sure.
So, what do we wanna do? Do you want to give them permission to take their draft to CPCNH?
I think my inclination would be to wait till I hear back from Joe Driscoll and see if I get any additional information, at which point I can pass along sort of aggregated comments from the select board to the energy committee.
So we do meet in 2 weeks, so it's not going to be a big void.
Okay.
Summer's over.
Yep. Could you,
She's chained to her desk now.
could you ask, I'd be curious from Joe to know which towns he has that are now, have gone ahead with CPCNH, and which towns are the ones he mentioned that they might wanna wait a year, just
Okay.
for our committee's edification.
Okay,
That sounds like a good plan. You okay with that, Ben?
Mhm.
We wait, so we will let our eyes stay glazed for another couple of weeks.
Thank you.
You're
Right.
welcome. Thank you.
Jim's gonna have the problem explaining it to the public hearing.
Well, somebody on the committee, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if we can get back on track.
Phoebe's on that committee too, is she still on the line? Does she have?
Yes, she's still on the line. She's
Because I
on the
think
line.
she's gonna report on the board
Oh.
meeting, CPCNH.
Ms.
She has
Clinton,
unmuted, so.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you're on.
I did want to mention that the CEO of CPCNH does live in Hanover and has been really responsive to all of our questions and came to Lyme for a public information session we did in June. So
Nice.
another good information.
Okay, and, who is that? I know we knew who it was in June, but we don't know now. Can you tell us who
His
it is?
name's Brian Conan.
Thank you. And,
He used to be an official at the co-op, the New Hampshire Electric Co-op. He was one of the top officials there and then came over to CPCNH.
excellent.
So-
Thank you. And so do you have any other, you're gonna report on the meeting, or?
I was just sharing the agendas because you guys expressed concerns about a voting member signing Lyme up for anything that you didn't particularly endorse. So I just wanted to give you context for the kinds of things that are discussed at the member meeting and then at the board meeting. And the board is a subgroup of the members. There's only 20 voting members. But really it is about, risk analysis and the operations of CPCNH, not really anything that directly affects the towns individually. So that was my only aim in sharing the agenda was to be transparent and helpful.
Thank you,
Thank you, Evie.
Yep. that was good, appreciate it. Okay,
Before we move on, can we take a 5-minute
we
break?
will take a 5-minute break. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Hebe.
Thanks, Jim.
We're gonna take a short break, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Even if you get struck in your truck, you're not very safe.
No.
But
they
it's
used to say
better
that.
than being in the pop-up tent.
I only worried about a tree falling, that was my big
Oh,
deal.
yeah,
Right.
I've been camping when the tree was a question.
Yeah,
All right, let's move right along. We have a land use change tax that's been,
Finally,
the
some easy
warrant
stuff.
has been.
yeah, so,
We'll come back to the hard stuff later. That has been issued for property owner Russ in the amount of $12,935 and, let's see, this is, the property has a home site and driveway now cleared. Taxpayer submitted an updated current use map. This is map 407, lot 58-1000 on Orford Road. Our tax assessor has reported the assessed value for the 2.6 acre home site was $109,950. Equalization ratio was 85%, which resulted in an equalized value of $129,350, which resulted in the $12,935 land use change tax.
that is correct.
So,
That's a no-brainer.
okay.
We love no-brainers, huh?
Well, we love
We love
land
things
use
that
change
put
tax.
positive on it.
All right, here,
So, what do we wish to do with this?
Move it.
Okay, Ben,
I'll second.
thank you, David. All those in favor of
Two spots.
assessing this? I think Ben said aye, David said aye, and
Yeah.
Judy said aye. It's approved. Okay, that's approved.
thank you.
You are welcome. That one we're waiting on. That was approved. Solar projects. Gina, solar projects. Do we have these?
Solar projects,
That's what, review pending projects.
oh, I guess I thought that,
I guess we don't need to.
somebody was coming from, yeah, to talk about the additional, like he just mentioned, the school.
Oh, the school.
Just using the money for something different.
So they're looking into that.
So we can wait for the next meeting.
Okay,
I'm sorry, what?
You just signed that.
we will go on the
You
next
just signed
meeting.
that I passed around,
Yeah.
right?
You hand me your.
Oh, okay, I was gonna attach it together. So yeah, I thought we should talk
Okay.
about all that, but we can wait for the next meeting,
Okay, that sounds
after they
good.
have their meeting, and then David
Yeah.
will know what's going on with that.
So we are gonna do a budget review, and we will talk about the budget, proposed budgets from department heads, how we're gonna handle that, but before we get to that, we touched on this very early, but Dina, if you wanted to just give us an update on the beach
Oh.
testing information, we did have someone who was very concerned about the goose poop and the beach testing, and we've kind of resolved that issue, I think, but let's just run by it one more time.
Okay, yes, then, and of course, we talked about what I think I was gonna point out at this time earlier in the meeting about rain runoff and that causing the problems, and the testing is now back to within normal stages. The DES beach summer program, testing program will be coming in still
Okay.
randomly, they don't tell us when, we never know, to test the waters again. So I suspect anytime we have a big storm, he'll be back, just to make sure.
Yeah,
Yes, the goose droppings have been taken care of by, our Andrew, his name is Andrew, he's a 17-year-old young man who lives here in the town of Lyme. have geese again, which I
What are we
suspect we
paying
will.
him?
We're paying him $18 an hour.
I wouldn't do that job for that.
Nobody would do it, you're right.
Apparently,
We couldn't get people to do it for all kinds of promises, but, yeah, so he's doing it, and now it's down to literally, a bike ride out, and he checks, and there's, 2 or 3 spots, and a bike ride back, so, after
These
the
tests,
first.
just to be clear, these tests do not differentiate between coliform and fecal bacteria.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Yep, the last contamination that was no swimming was fecal. So, and again, it's not 100% the geese, no, when you have
Well,
that much.
let's put it this way, they don't specify whether the fecal is human
Or
or
bird.
goose.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, or warm-blooded
So
animal.
I had an idea, we have these geese that are defouling our beach here, and we lost the supplier for the Christmas hams.
Oh, I thought that was a secret email.
They don't
Town
taste
employees.
anywhere near as good as the Christmas ham.
Well, the other thing, I
We
don't
could
know,
kill 2 birds
Jeez.
literally with one
Chief
stone.
O'Keefe is still here, so he can back me up on this, but it is against federal law to
Oh, yeah.
kill geese.
Really, can you get a
You can't
depredation permit if they're?
Yes,
It's I've submitted
yes,
it.
yes.
Okay.
But
Oh,
we
what
don't
kind of
talk
permit?
about that.
Depredation.
Depredation.
I know that we're on recording, we don't
That's
talk
when the
about
birds
that.
disappear, Rich.
Uh-huh.
We'll have a very hard time.
Okay.
I'm gonna write that word down, it's a great word.
Yeah,
Yes, so, just to be clear, and so that we have it in the minutes, that, the goose is a federally protected bird, and if one should be caught even harassing them, technically, it could be really bad, and
Be $10,000 fine.
yeah,
you
it's
would be
huge.
a felon.
Does that actually mean like waving your arms at them
Yeah.
when they're on your
No,
lawn?
but if you were chasing them around with
If you're chasing them.
something,
Yeah,
trying to,
okay,
you
all
know,
right, so you
whatever,
can,
you can, oh yeah,
say,
you
"Go
know,
away."
normal things
Yeah,
are.
okay.
Every once in a while I hear
practice this,
people
shoot.
shooting blue jays at their bird feeder. They don't understand that if they were caught at that,
A blue jay is a protected bird.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it's
So is a
interesting.
chickadee.
yeah.
So, and
Parents
this
don't know
individual was correct, we did, more than a few years ago, have 25 geese removed. We had 27 that year, and 2 were not caught, but they caught 25 and removed them. It was a great help, it was a costly help, it was like $2,700 or something like that to have them come in and do it. I don't think that I don't think having 5 geese constitutes that kind of a
They
charge.
do that during their flightless period
Correct,
or past the flightless
That's right.
period. So they have
Right.
a fish and game does goose roundup every year just to
Right.
mark and ban
right,
geese, but that's the only time they can fish.
yes.
So, yeah, the 2 that escaped are probably great
Oh,
grandparents.
that was like 7 years ago or something like that, but yeah, and we
No,
actually,
you're always
it's,
gonna have geese at Post
Yes.
Pond. I
That's
mean,
right.
you've got habitat there, and I've
That's
told
right.
Tina many times how to cure that. She doesn't wanna
stop
listen to
it,
me.
stop it, stop
That
it.
means getting rid of the green fields that are all around
Since
the beach.
1960, yeah, you want me to go on my little thing here?
Okay, so,
Woodcock
moving,
habitat.
Moving
right
on.
along. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Anyways, we have this beautiful facility, and yes, we need to take care of it,
We're trying.
and we do our best.
And it's goose habitat,
That's
Yeah.
correct.
whether you like it or not.
So, okay, we're doing our best. The few times I've been down there in the last 2 weeks, it
You know, if you
really
had
looked
enough
great.
geese, you
It
wouldn't
looks
have to
great.
hire the lawnmowers.
All right, we are really digressing. Okay,
Yeah, I'm not even writing anything down.
I would not. Juneteenth, just throwing this out, we did have some inquiries this year from 1 or more employees. It is a federal holiday now. Do we wanna add it as a federal holiday, or do we wanna let people take the day off without pay?
How many do we have federal holidays?
Oh, I looked this up yesterday, I didn't count them, we
We
have,
have 10.
10?
thank you, Dina.
And how many of those are no longer popular?
No longer
They're
popular.
all
Well,
popular.
because like Columbus Day, didn't they find that he was a bad guy?
Well,
Well, now it's Indigenous Peoples'
it's
Day.
different, yeah, we don't get that one, but,
Most people don't get Columbus Day anymore, they get the others.
yeah.
Uh,
What is Juneteenth? Explain it to me.
It is
It's the
the day
end of
that
slavery.
the slavery was ended and the slaves were freed. It's the day that the
The
proclamation
last of them,
was
yeah,
finalized, I believe.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not,
Let's think about it, because it would mean, it's a little bit of money, and it's a day, well, everybody likes a day
are
off.
banks usually closed?
Banks are
Yes.
now, banks are now closed.
Mascoma wasn't though.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was?
Yep.
Interesting.
And, federal buildings are closed.
All federal buildings, mail, everything.
Yeah, mail was not, yeah, so,
Most state buildings.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Hey.
I'm laughing because you know me. I think we get
A lot of holidays.
huge amount of holidays and paid days off, and I'm so thankful for it. And I would never speak against it because the other employees might be mad at me.
Yes, they
So
might.
it's 100%
Okay,
whatever you guys
So-
think.
think about it, we will need to decide if we're gonna add an extra day.
Right.
That,
We find out how many more of these things they're gonna spring on us. They're gonna get up to 25 or 30?
well, I've been saying for a long time that we need to have 1 3-day weekend a month. That makes everybody happy.
No holidays and 1 3-day weekend a month.
Well, Thanksgiving, Christmas
I
could be
get it.
3 days. Okay, we did that. We are down to, the really fun stuff. We have a 6-month budget review. Dina just did this up last night. And the very last page shows that as of June 30th, we had 57.72% of our general fund as voted at town meeting left. So it's 7% above a little tiny bit extra.
And let me tell you how nervous that makes me.
Usually there's 60,
The end of
65%.
June, we are not ever at 57%.
Yeah.
So I'm just, there's
So
my note.
as we go forward, we will
Of
be
caution.
starting very soon. I want to start a little earlier this year, working on next year's budget proposal. We need to really keep an eye on expenditures now in the next. Yes, sir.
Could I ask a couple questions? As of June 30th, we are at what number? 50?
It's 57.72% left
Of the budget.
of the budget.
And we are halfway through the year?
Well,
Six-
June 30th is halfway through the year.
Yeah, okay, so that's, isn't that interesting?
That's 7.2%.
Yes, I see where the 7% comes from. And is this solely the town budget and not the school budget?
Correct.
Okay.
We're not
Just the
involved with the
Yep,
schools.
right, I thought so, I just wanted to be sure, yeah.
Yes, thank goodness.
They haven't, when do they close their,
The school, June 30th.
right,
Yeah.
their
They
year is
just closed,
different.
the audit is happening right now, so.
Okay, so, food for thought, we'll probably either next meeting or the meeting after be beginning budgeting, which is everybody's favorite subject. We did get a note, it mostly would concern me, with the, draft of the proposed meeting schedule for the budget committee meetings, which occur Wednesdays, starting September 13th and concluding sometime mid to late February. So, I looked at it, it looked pretty standard. I had a question that this board I'd like to think about. Last year, well, for a number of years now, department heads go to the early budget committee meetings and talk about their wish list and where they are in their budget and what they're gonna hopefully propose for the upcoming budget. And the meetings are at night. For employees, that means extra time spent. In the past, I believe, it's just, they just show up, they're here for an hour or so and they go home. We did have an occasion to pay some overtime last year. If all of our employees got paid overtime, that could be a little bite out of a very close budget. So I'm wondering, and I would bring this up with Dick, who's the chair of the budget committee, if we could get department heads to actually put in writing their projections and their wish lists, and then not actually appear in person. I don't know how that would fly, but,
Oh, we've been very fortunate. The storms that have circled around us have not struck Lyme like they have in the past.
right,
That would have put us over the top easily.
yeah,
Well, in thinking about the whole budget process, the department heads technically come up with their own
Yep.
budgets that they're proposing.
right,
I would presume, at least as a department head, the important people for me to get behind my budget proposal before it even goes to the budget committee is the select board. So to present to the board, meet with the board, talk with the board, and then have that go to the budget committee in writing, for me, is important, but.
so here's how, having been on the budget committee many years ago, and being a part of a way different operating select board, early in September, the board met casually with all the department heads. They talked about what was needed, what wasn't needed, what equipment, what salaries, whatever. And there was a draft proposal that went to the budget committee from the select board, and then the budget committee, if there was an issue with, let's say, the road agent thought they needed a new piece of equipment that the select board hadn't put in the budget committee would have an opportunity at that point to invite in the road agent and say, okay, explain why you think you need this piece of equipment, and the select board doesn't approve it. So it wasn't every department head for every budget. As the years have gone by, I think it sort of became an established opportunity for the department heads to feel comfortable ahead of establishing a budget. And in the early days of doing this, the select board wasn't even present for those early
Right.
budget committee meetings. I would like to think that we have a much better relationship with our department heads, and that together we could come up with a budget that everybody agreed to. And there might be wish list items that
Sure.
could easily be brought up. It could save some budget committee time, it could save department heads from having to come out at night and go to a night meeting and then show up at work at 8 in the morning. But I wanted to have that brief discussion before going forward, because it would be a slight change. It's actually going back a number of years, but I think it
I mean,
could.
it doesn't mean the department heads can't come to the budget committee. I'm sure the budget committee, I remember this, they like to hear from
Yes,
the budget.
they do.
The heads.
The department heads, yeah, they like,
But I think having some sort of a cohesive budget already
I think it'd be great.
confirmed by
Excuse me.
the
Bless you.
proposed amount being agreeable to the board and to the department head, that goes to the budget committee, makes it a better presentation, but that's just me, I don't know.
As a member of the budget committee, I did enjoy the discussions with the department heads, and to say what, if there were extra money, what would you do? What kinds of things
Right.
would you do? And if, if there's not extra money, what could you pare back? And I think those are, first of all, those are fair questions.
Yep, oh, very fair question.
I hope they're all prepared to answer them, because I'm gonna ask them.
Well,
But I
as you
think
saw
that that's a
last year,
useful
They
discussion.
don't always have answers for those, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
But the board could also, if the concern is, coming out to a night meeting and having overtime, you could make it clear to the department heads that, like I know that Chief O'Keefe does, or Camden, when he would come, it would either be while he was on
duty.
call,
Mhm.
or on duty, or Chief O'Keefe would take 2 hours off during the day or a day before, and then you come and stay
Yep,
at the night
so you
meeting.
compensate
So
for
you
it.
compensate for it, so you're not creating that overtime. And we all know that we have flexibility in our scheduling to do that.
Yep. Any thoughts?
I'm fine either way.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get resistance from Dick if you try to structure the budget committee meetings without
So
department.
they don't come, that's right. Yeah.
Well, yes, I'm sure. Okay, so
So in other words, keep Dick happy.
we'll keep Dick happy, we'll have a little conversation with our department heads so they know to make sure they take time off to compensate.
Mhm.
And we will try and establish a draft budget before going forward, so everybody kind of knows where they are.
Right, and usually I give the department heads an idea of a deadline to get a budget to you guys,
So
or a proposed
that
budget.
would be coming right up.
Yeah,
It would be, well, October 11th is the first, so,
yeah, but you guys usually meet before and look at it.
yeah, so,
Okay.
so if you wanna give those guys, August 10th, August 24th, that first meeting in September, maybe, our department heads could give us something so that we can be ready by October 11th with a draft, and then the department heads are also well prepared for.
So for September 7th.
That'd be great. And then they hopefully also will have answers for Rich.
You can give them a heads up, you're gonna be
Yeah.
asked this.
Yeah, usually we do the list thing where I say, wish list and things like that.
You got some good answers last year, you got
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
some no answers.
And, it's like, we're increasing our paperclip budget by $6. It's like,
Yes.
okay.
Right, okay.
You said okay, you didn't say why.
No, I mean, on a $6 budget, I give them that management decision.
I think we have concluded the public conversations. We have several non-public sessions that we need to go into. It is 11:08, and I will move that we go into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3,